No, the sheriff's been, I know the sheriff's been up all night, but not you. This is a little smaller meeting today, basically because hopefully we're cresting today, awful close to cresting today. And so it's kind of getting together a tactical team just to talk about what we need to do and what's going to go on forward. I think the city of Fargo has done very well, but I think, Mary, you've had some challenges in the county that have happened and have some of the bad effects of a flood. Some of your neighborhoods are in true trouble today. So I'm pleased with how this flood fight has gone. When you look around the city, things look fairly well. We are able to test our flood dikes and our gates, and they are working. They're not leaking, and they're performing as we thought they would. But it's interesting to see like a 35 flood in town is not as bad as could have been in the years past. So, Mary, you want to make some opening comments?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Yes, rural Cass County has really had a fight the last few days, and they will continue to for a few more. County Engineer Jason Benson just told me that last night at 2, 3 o'clock, they had problems up in the Cybele Edition, and it's just covered with water. And the problem is some of these places have never flooded before, and all of a sudden there's water lapping up at your back door coming across the field. So we've been very, very busy. We have the Tactical Operations Center open, and up there with us, and I want to just thank all our partners from across North Dakota, other counties that have pitched in, all the way from Williams County and this way, and also the Guard has been up there and giving us support as well. So appreciate all the hard effort of our staff, both the Highway Department, Emergency Service, the Sheriff's Department, and all the support staff. They've been busy. They've been up in the middle of the night. It seems like that's when you get calls, and so some real sleepless nights, and we're not through with it yet. So, and they're going to give you a few more details here later on.
Very good. Bernie Dardis, how are things in West Fargo today?
West Fargo is well suited to deal with the spring melt season. You notice we don't call it a flood season because of our diversion. It works very well. In the 27-year history of our diversion, it's never failed us. It continues to operate as it was designed. That being said, ours is focused on the river, focused on the river flows, not crests. And because of all the water we have coming through the diversion from the extensive watershed district of Ashtabula, Devil's Lake, everything that's coming through there, ours is actually months long. It goes on and on and on. So we're not concerned about crests. We're concerned about how much flow and how much pressure that does put on the diversion and or the Cheyenne River also. At this time, we're expecting the river crest Tuesday evening. The city, in conjunction with the Southeast Water Resource District and the City of Horace, has enacted its comprehensive spring melt plan to ensure any risk or impact of flooding is minimized. Like most communities in the area, there's 3 critical steps that we have to deal with. We have our operations center, where some of our key people are seated with me here today. Have done a marvelous job. We've named a commission liaison to the operations center, which is myself. And we've issued an emergency declaration to provide the departments and the agencies with the help that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce, how are things going?
Thank you, Mayor. On our agenda, I've called this emergency measures, and I'd like to turn it over to Nathan Boerboom with the City of Fargo, of course, Jason Benson from Cass County, and then ask Chris Brungart, City of West Fargo, maybe to make a few comments. But I thought it would be nice to start out first with a series of hydrographs, starting out with the Red River at the north. In Fargo, this is really good news. It looks like the Red River is cresting while we're meeting here today. That's very good news. The other good news is about 3 days ago, that crest elevation looked like it was going to hang around for a number of days. Now it looks like it'll drop off rather quickly, quicker than we're used to. And I think that will help some of the county overland situations as well. So with that, Nathan, maybe you can run through the various hydrographs that you have here that I think are really interesting, and then quickly talk about the emergency measures that we took. We had a limited amount based on this crest prediction of lower lying areas that are affected at this 35-foot elevation. And so we had a special meeting of our city commission last Wednesday to approve buttoning up some of those lower lying areas, very limited emergency measures, and we're happy about that. So Nathan?
Yeah, sure. So as you can see on here, and Bruce has mentioned, does look like the river is cresting currently in Fargo, or hovering right around just shy of that 35-foot mark that the National Weather Service has been projecting for almost a week for us now. If you go to the next slide, I can turn this one over to Jason, I guess, and talk about Cheyenne River quickly.
Yeah, so we're really focused right now at the Cheyenne at Harwood, and over the last 24 hours, it's bumped up from just over 91 up to that 91.5, where we expect it to stay for the next 3-4 days. And with that, the impacts of that is not necessarily immediate for areas. As it's bumped up, it starts pouring over roads, and so some residents might see the water coming over a road and think, well, it's just a little trickle, and then it gets a little more, and 4 hours later, that water's up around their house. So we expect some of these areas to continue to fill in with water and people to lose access. One of the good things, as Bruce had commented, with the red going down, once it drops, usually in that 33-foot range is when we start to see some drop on the Cheyenne gauge at Harwood, which time's about the same, where we expect it to drop below 91 later at the week when the red is dropping below 33.
So
Yeah, I don't know if you want to cover the wild rice or.
yeah, sure. So here's the two hydrographs of the wild rice that we kind of watch. The one is over at Abercrombie, so down in Richland County. That looked like it crested back on Saturday and is having a steady decline. The other one that we watch is the gauge over at St. Benedict Church. If you want, there you go. That one looks like it crested over the weekend, probably right around early Saturday morning. It started breaking out down around County Road 16 down there. So that's why you see the flat leveling off that has occurred. But now it looks like we are starting to go down a little bit out there as well.
Yeah, on the Maple River, we're having a few issues, it looks like, on the gauge south of I-94 on the Maple River. But you can see the gauge that's immediately north of Mapleton on Cass 11. It looks like we're starting to see some drop, and we expect that that'll be dropping here, a foot over the next couple of days. With the Maple River Dam that's south of Chaffee, that's been a great project in providing additional storage capacity. So what we're seeing right now is a lot of the tributary flows from Buffalo Creek, Swan Creek, that are out in that Wheatland and Castleton area coming through. That dumps into the Maple south of Mapleton. But those flows should be reducing, and the Maple River Dam is still storing, so it has a 10 by 10 box culvert that's allowing flow through, but everything else that's coming into that reservoir now is being stored, and we've got a few more days before that is anticipated to overtop the emergency spillway. But by then we should be starting to draw down those tributary flows. So it's really working, and I think it'll work well with that storage capacity on the Maple River Dam.
Thank you. So with respect to emergency measures, as I just mentioned, we didn't have to do much. That's a good thing, but we did have to implement some limited emergency measures, and I know there are activities going on in the county and even West Fargo. You've got permanent flood protection infrastructure, and applaud you for that. But there are some things you have to do to allow that to operate for you. So Nate, maybe you could talk about Fargo's emergency measures real quick, and then I'll go to Jason and Chris if you're teed up.
Yeah, sure. So I don't have any pictures of the emergency measures that Fargo constructed here. We only had 5 locations where we had to construct some emergency measures. 4 of those we used trap bags, similar product that the county uses, and 1 location was a clay levee. But instead I thought it'd be maybe beneficial to show some pictures of areas we would have had to construct emergency measures in the past if it wasn't for the flood wall that got recently constructed here downtown a few years ago. So on the picture on the left was from late last week when the Public Works Department was out installing the flood wall at 4th Avenue. That wall right now currently has water up against it, so it is functioning as designed. And the picture on the right is from last evening, where you can see the water is along almost the entire stretch of the flood wall out on 2nd Street. So it's a great thing for the city of Fargo to not have to construct the clay levee on 2nd Street, be able to keep 2nd Street open, and not rely on that emergency measure we had to for so many years. And then here's another one down by the water treatment plant, another flood wall that was constructed a handful of years ago, just further illustrating a lot of the 20 miles that the city's been able to complete over the past 10 years, and that will continue to complete in junction with the diversion to provide us that permanent protection.
Thank you, Nathan. And then, yeah, Jason, as Commissioner Sherling just mentioned, you're fighting the good fight out in the county, so you've got some really good pictures here.
Right. Thanks, Bruce. So we put a couple temporary levees in using trap bags, and those were completed on Friday, so ahead of the crest. Fortunately, with 35, the water will be up close, but shouldn't be on these. But we wanted to make sure we had plenty of freeboard in case something changed in the weather. Next slide. We have been out utilizing a lot of our 100,000 sandbags that we filled. Overall, we delivered just under 40,000 empty sandbags with loads of sand out to different rural residents, and then about 60,000 filled sandbags, of which a number of those have been kind of emergency calls. And we've done that with the support of a contractor delivering them with our county staff, and then yesterday we had the National Guard on board, and they were out supporting that as well. So some really great support. You know, our contractor, their ability to get down some of these roads with some pretty large trucks to deliver sandbags, you know, kudos to them. And then some long hours from our county staff getting called in the middle of the night to go out and provide some of these sandbags to folks that are in dire need.
Thank you, Jason. And before I go to you, Chris, we obviously in Fargo have a supply of sandbags as well. We planned on sandbagging for 2 weeks. When the crest prediction got backed off, we shut that down immediately. But we've got bags available, and so if you need us, please call on us.
Right, thank you. And right now, in coordination that Jim Prochniak, our emergency manager's made, when we get below a stockpile of 20,000, that's when we'll reach out, and so we'd like to be able to have about 20,000 on hand. So if we had to push out emergency, you know, we've got plenty.
And I know, Jason, some people will want to volunteer to help out in sandbagging and getting them on the lines. Is there any place they would go for that or call for that?
You know, right now, we've only had a few calls for some assistance because it's so scattered, and it's been more on a kind of emergent issue versus something where last week people that knew they needed their protection were planning and had family and friends come out, and that's when we were looking for more of those volunteers. Right now, it's a lot of areas where volunteers are needed. It's hard to even get in, let alone, you know, so encourage folks that are out there that need to support. They can call in on our 241-8000 hotline. And then if there are volunteers that are available, they can still call First Link and be on the list, and that's where we encourage folks that do need support and have the ability to get volunteers into their location. If the road isn't overtopped, call First Link, and First Link will provide that linkage with the volunteers to drive out to their individual farmstead.
Thank you. And Chris Brungart, West Fargo Public Works Director, you've got the luxury of permanent flood protection, but there are things you have to do for that to function, and maybe you can just talk about that a little bit.
Well, certainly, as Mayor Darda said before, we opened an operations center, just a warm operations center, so we start coordinating among all our departments to make sure we continue surveillance monitoring of our river system. The Cheyenne River diversion actually has two different projects to it. There's the Horace project and there's the West Fargo project. They offer different levels of protection. The West Fargo project is a complete diversion of the Cheyenne River around the old core area of West Fargo. So we physically close gates and cut off the river as it gets diverted around that part of town. The Horace diversion is a split flow operation and actually splits the flow in the channel in half or even greater. Right now, the Cheyenne River Channel has a capability carrying about 4,600 CFS. We measure in flows, not so much in levels. And once it hits the Horace Inlet, it actually gets split into 2,000 and continues in the Cheyenne River Channel, and the other remaining goes through the diversion. So what we're looking at right now is a full river channel south of the I-94 that has issues with a history of issues, ice jams, and sloughing those banks, riverbank stability. So those are the things that we really watch closely throughout the entire flood season. As Mayor Darnus said before, is once the levels drop and crest, we continue to have those flows, base flows over 2,000 for quite a long time. Bald Hill Dam is currently discharging at 1,400 CFS. So that along with base flows continue that up. So once the ice goes out, most of our issues go away. So we're basically have a small staff that's just monitoring the riverbanks.
Thank you, and I hope we didn't steal your thunder here. We did have a hydrograph for you.
Thank you. Well, I can certainly talk about the hydrograph. As there's the Cheyenne River West Fargo diversion. That's up actually by our shop. That's on the diversion. You can see yesterday we had a sharp increase in the flow rates. We're actually a little bit over predicted right now. Sometime here on the 8th or 9th, will be today or tomorrow, we're looking at a crest on there, and you see it's going to maintain over the flows. We'd be about 4,300 CFS. Once it gets over 4,600, it actually spills out and goes overland. So that's why we have a limited effect in West Fargo. And you see as it slowly drops off, it'd be quite a long time before it drops below to 2,000 CFS. And the right hand is a hydrograph of Bald Hill Dam. You can see they're currently having 1,400 CFS coming into the structure, and they're releasing over 1,200 CFS. So that's the balance that we're running on in West Fargo. And we mentioned before, the continued flows. We're looking at the ice jams or failures of the riverbanks. Like everyone else, we're looking for the inflow and infiltration, any type of standing water, so it doesn't inundate our sanitary system. And we're just prepared for power failures. That's our other big concern.
Thank you, Chris. Next on the agenda I put together, we had something called contingency plans. And since the river is cresting as we speak at 35 feet, in Fargo anyway, we have contingency plans, but have no intent to implement those, and we're thankful for that. But I did want to acknowledge Greg Gust with the National Weather Service. I think he's in the room. Greg, would you care to make any comments? You got good news about rain, snow. Ben Dow over the weekend sent me a real scary forecast of over an inch of moisture while the river would be cresting, and that kind of thing scares me. But that's changed. Weather changes quickly. So, Greg?
Well, thank you for that, Bruce. And it's scary in the sense that there is a large winter storm that's expected across eastern South Dakota, southern Minnesota. There there's always in the mix of models, there's at least one computer model that wants to bring it further north up into the valley here. At this point, the predominant thread is mainly that it's going to be eastern South Dakota, southern Minnesota. We could get in the Fargo-Moorhead area a tenth of an inch, between a tenth of an inch and a quarter of an inch of liquid amount rain, snow mix Wednesday into Thursday here down toward Wahpeton, and maybe up to a half inch or more south of Wahpeton toward the border. But the bulk of it should be south of the basin itself. Any of that occurring, though, is going to be coming in behind this flood crest. So it's going to be days before that moisture gets into the river system and up here. So the only way it could really affect things is if it started today, because we're very near crest now, and came from here north up to Grand Forks.
Okay. Thank you, Greg. And so as I just mentioned, with respect to contingency planning in Fargo, we don't see any need for any of that. We're thankful for that. But in the county, Jason and Mary and Robert are fighting a slightly different flood fight. And so, Jason, can you talk about your contingency plans that you have in place?
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. So right now, we've got the 10 personnel from the National Guard that are on standby to be able to deliver sandbags. Yesterday, they ran 13 different missions, getting sandbags out to rural residents. We also have our county staff that's supporting a similar mission. And overnight, because of the experience of our county staff and their knowledge of the road networks and how to get into some of these places during hours of darkness, our county staff is the emergency response from 11 at night until 7 in the morning, and then the National Guard will conduct those response activities predominantly during the daylight hours. So we're ready. We've deployed over 10,000 sandbags out to areas either later in the evening or overnight to respond. And in part, every flood's different. This flood has been that way as well. We've seen areas immediately north of West Fargo that typically see some flooding from the Cheyenne that are still a little bit dry, and then immediately 2 miles north, there's overland flooding from the Maple, and then further north from that on the Rush, and then up in the Gardner area with all the drainage and water that's coming from out further west by Hunter and Arthur. A lot of water has been kind of stacking up west of I-29 and caused problems. We've been getting an excavator out and clearing a few areas here and there. Of course, there's hundreds of miles that could be cleared, so we don't have that capability. But in some critical spots, we do have a contractor, and we do have our forces to be able to also respond to try to open up. I think as the weather has improved, and yesterday with the warm up, I'm hopeful that a few more of these culverts and drainage systems will start opening up as well and releasing some of that water so that we don't have to respond at some of these midnight calls. And but again, we want people to be very vigilant in watching the water because it can all of a sudden release upstream from a culvert or start to overtop a road that maybe hasn't overtopped in the past, and in a matter of a few hours can have water surrounding their homes. And those are the types of cases that we've been responding to. I'd like to also turn it over to our Sheriff Johnner, to talk about some of the other emergency response that we've done.
Sure. So thanks, Jason. Last Friday, we opened up our Tactical Operations Center, which you can see on the upper right-hand photo there. And that brought all of our major players, different resources that we have available to us, and put everyone in the same room so that we could collaborate and quicker respond to our citizens' needs and answer questions as people called in and had different questions on sandbag response and emergency response. So we started that last Friday. And we transitioned over to 12-hour shifts, 24 coverage. Our Tactical Operations Center is open 24 hours. And we've had numerous calls coming into our Tactical Operations Center that we fielded calls from anywhere to sandbag deployment, checking on culverts, welfare checks, road closures, a number of calls. In addition, we have our partners from Mercer County, Williams County, Burley County, who have agreed to help us in the flood fight and provide some additional boat assets that we've needed to utilize. And then a thank you to the North Dakota Highway Patrol, who's also agreed to provide us staff so that we could supplement our staff, who's getting pretty tired at this point. So those are our contingency plans we have in place and ones that we've utilized. In the picture on the bottom left there, you can see a vehicle that's called a Sherp that's on that flatbed, and we've used that a few times. A pretty versatile vehicle that can go both in the water and over ice and stuff. So I guess that's pretty much it for our contingency plans and our emergency measures we have. So thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Chris, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but we'll let you close out this section.
Certainly. Like I said before, I mean, our big concerns during the spring melt isn't too much different than the large rains during the summer is if we have that capacity in our river channel, we have power outages to maintain our lift stations. We've have a certain number of sandbags from Cass County on hand, identified any clay and any type of resources needed if we need to reconstruct a few of the contingency dikes on the Cheyenne River. Otherwise, we've enacted neighborhood captains to ask the neighborhoods to actually watch their own rivers, report back if they see issues. So we're in good shape. Thank you.
Thank you. And being an old utilities guy, a good part of my career, I'm always interested in how utilities function through a flood, because we've had good times and bad over the past number of years. So with respect to streets, roads, utilities, Ben, maybe you could give us a little status update from over the weekend. Currently, we're still pumping all the storm sewer we collect to the Red River, and so that requires quite a big effort.
That is correct, Bruce. You know, we had a very good weekend overall. Whenever you take a flood event like this, you see some hiccups come in and you see where some of your weak points might be, but it was never anything that surprised us. So we have seen our drain system with the warm temperatures yesterday fill up. Drain 10 out by the airport and County Road 20. We did add some additional pumping capacity later in the day yesterday. So that's going well. We're seeing it to a decrease in the water in that drain. So we're doing well there. We're running about 25 auxiliary pumps out there in the neighborhoods, additional places where we're monitoring hourly with our crews. We're still running around the clock with all our crews, so that's good. Really, sanitary system, I haven't heard anything from Jim Haushauser up there. I think flows are good. We're not seeing any additional water coming into the system. And so this has been a good event, but with the warm temperatures, we did see additional runoff yesterday that put some strain on our system.
Thank you. Relative to the sanitary sewer system, if there was a crisis, Jim always calls at 3 in the morning, and I didn't get a call, so that's good news. But it seemed like the lead story in the news now are road closures in the county, and I know you've got a number of those. So Jason, for the public's benefit, here's a chance to talk about those a little bit.
All right, thank you. And it's our two-person sign crew that usually is out maintaining our signs have been very busy and augmented with the rest of our staff, and that's where, you know, having the ability to bring on the National Guard to support some of our other operations to free up our other staff to support getting barricades up. As the waters kind of moved from west to east across the county, that the area just north of West Fargo through Harwood and Argusville, we're seeing substantial road closures. And now with the river getting up close to 35 from north of Harwood all the way to the Trail County line, our County Road 31, which is a gravel road that parallels the Red River, just generally a mile or less off of the Red River. Numerous points on that are starting to overtop. So, you know, that'll be predominantly closed for through traffic and just open for the local residents to get access. And I know we'll see more of those road closures as that crest water passes through Fargo and moves north towards that Trail County line. We do have a few closures where the water is going over the road, but we still have it open for local traffic. And one is just south of I-94 on the Kindred Road, Cass 15, about a half-mile south of I-94. There's just a few inches going over our bridge there, so we've got reduced speeds. And then north of West Fargo towards Harwood on Cass County 17 and Cass County 20. In those areas, we've got it open, and while there's only a few inches of water, we'd like to be able to keep it open for rural residents that still need to use those roads to access their properties. But yesterday I passed a semi going through that, and there's clearly barricades that say road closed, local traffic only, and I don't know too many semi drivers that are delivering up in that area. So please, we encourage all of our community to try to avoid these areas, so just leave it for those local residents that really need to use those roads to access their property. But we'll continue to, as roads come out of the water, we get out and assess. If it's a bridge crossing, we get those assessed pretty quick so we can try to get the roads open again and allow people access back in.
Thank you, Jason. And again, I think if there's any good news in the latest hydrograph, it looks like Red River, Fargo dropping below 33 feet as early as Friday, so that'll help. Chris, West Fargo, you've got streets and utilities too?
The biggest issues we have right now is we have in one of our neighborhoods, we had a force main fail. The flap gate appears to be stuck in the river and we can't get it open. So Ben is gracious enough to allow us to pump into Rocking Horse over there, and that's been a great help, keeping the levels down in that neighborhood. We've also, as helping Jason over here, like 52nd Avenue West Diversion just went under this morning, so we're out there blocking that off. So otherwise, we're just here to be able to help.
Thank you. So with that update, Mayor, I'll turn it back to you, but I think the county doing a great job, different kind of flood fight, but most of the good news is good news here today.
Yeah, this is for a flood we expected might have got to 41. We're very pleased to see that. We had just the 35, but still it has issues in our community and county. Myself and the commissioners are pleased with the flood fight, with all the work everybody has done. I think as Ben and I talked, is an opportunity to rewrite our books on how we do these things and what we have to do in our city as well as in our county. There's always some surprises as some things happen that we don't expect. That happens every flood fight. But I think we're pleased. We should crest this week and start to go down. And I'm sure many people will appreciate when all our roads open up again. You don't realize until a bridge goes out how much you use one road to get to work. But thank you, everybody who's been working hard on this, and very pleased with how this has turned out.
Thank you. Any closing comments, Commissioner Sherling? You're not done yet. We realize that, so.
Thank you. Yes, we're going to have a few more days of dealing with this, so just really encourage rural residents to keep an eye on what's going on. If they can call us during the daytime instead of nighttime for sandbags, I know that's not always possible because it pops up pretty fast, but please don't hesitate to contact our Emergency Operations Center. It's 451-8000. That number and also all the road closures are on our website, and just go to the front page of our website and hit on the flood tab, and all kinds of good information there. Bottom line, we want to make sure everybody stays safe.
Thank you. And Mayor Dardis, you've been a good partner. Thanks for being a partner, West Fargo.
West Fargo is very proud to be a part of the neighboring communities and offer assistance. So to the Cass County and to Fargo, to our neighbors to the north and to our neighbors to the south, if we can help in any way. I'd encourage our residents, if there's another call for sandbagging, that we respond and go to whatever location, whether it's at the county or the city of Fargo, and assist in preparing more sandbags if they're needed. To those people that have been overcome by the water, Yeah, but you're in our thoughts, you're in our prayers. And there's a lot of people at this table and a lot of people that are sitting in the room that have worked very hard for permanent flood protection for our communities. This is once again a testimony when one looks at the resources, looks at the manpower that is expended every time that the rivers rise. We need to do all that we can to put permanent flood protection in place. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this point, a week from today, it looks like, if things go according to plan, we'll be approaching close to 30 feet, which is in Fargo, our major flood stage mark. And so we don't anticipate any more public meetings, but certainly appreciate everybody showing up and your attention and willing to help. And with that, we hope we don't see you next spring, but we'll be ready. Thank you, everybody.